Hey, welcome back. So in the last few months, we've seen generative AI form a part of nearly everything that we do. And we're moving from this model of what I call mainframe large language models, such as ChatGPT, to this much more distributed computing type approach where we're lots and lots of smaller models such as Alpaca, Vicuna, etc. are coming out of the woodwork, and therefore you can create very specific fine-tuned models that can perform specific tasks. But more importantly, they can run on your machine. They can run on your desktop or they can run up in the cloud. So this highly distributed model where potentially everybody in the future could probably have their own AI agent to represent them, or any company is going to have an AI agent that will be able to do things like answer questions about their company or perform actions on their behalf, doing things like buy or sell or getting insurance quotes, whatever. So as we move into this highly distributed model, then commerce has to change to reflect this. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to look at how marketplaces have evolved over the last 10, 20 years or so, and then we will see how that's likely to evolve within a world of AI. And a clue is going to be that I believe we're going to have an AI agent multi-sided platform. I hope that that's going to be a distributed model, which will be powered by something like Web3. But I think the reality is that the Web 2.0 platforms, such as your Facebooks, Instagrams, Twitters, etc., are likely to become these AI-powered multi-sided platforms. So that's a lot of technical terms, so let's break down what I mean by that. So before we get into what a multi-sided platform is and how it works in an AI agent-based world, we actually need to understand an earlier concept, which is this idea of two-sided marketplaces. And that's an idea that comes back from 2004, and we will look at the specific paper in a second. But a two-sided marketplace refers to a type of platform that brings together two distinct user groups or sides to facilitate transactions between them. And then each side essentially relies on each other to create value. Now, if we bring this into a simpler concept, just think of buyers and sellers. And so therefore, when you realize that, you will realize platforms such as eBay or platforms such as Airbnb or Uber are all two-sided marketplaces, right? So in the case of something like Uber, you have riders and you have drivers, and the platform is connecting the two things together. You have got drivers who are available, who are able to provide journeys across a city, and you've got riders who want to make journeys, and therefore the platform collaborates between the two to make that journey possible. And it provides things like pricing, the ability to connect the users together, and the ability to make payments. Similarly, we have a similar thing for things like Airbnb, where you have people who are the sellers, they are the owner of apartments, and then you have got the people who want to go and stay in the apartment, and therefore the platform brings these users together, provides payment facilities, search facilities, etc. So if you want to go and check out that paper and read a bit more about it, it is worth it. It's a really good paper. It's written by a guy called Jean-Charles Rocher and Jean Tirole, and it's available on the MIT website. I will put the link in the description and you can check that out. But it pretty much describes the examples that I gave you there. Of course, Uber, etc. didn't exist at that point. Now, the focus on this paper is really focused on the buyer and seller elements, but actually it focuses more on this idea of membership of the platform, and it really focuses on transacting capabilities, this idea of buying and selling. Whereas when we look at multi-sided platforms, it's less about that transactional elements, as we'll describe later. But go kind of work that out, because this is where multi-sided platforms have really taken a lot of their basis from that. Now, in that paper, there is another concept that's described, and it's this idea of multi-homing. And if you don't know what multi-homing is, it's essentially this idea that users or customers can simultaneously use other competing platforms or services to perform their needs. Why is that important? Because if you think of things like social networks, for example, we all use multiple social networks. You will maybe use something like Instagram, you'll use TikTok, you'll use things like YouTube, etc. And then you won't stick to one particular particular platform, depending on what you're trying to do, you'll jump between them. So from a user perspective, that gives a lot of benefits. It gives you choice and flexibility. It gives you resiliency, because if one of those platforms fails, you can switch to the other platform. So if you think about what's going on with something like Twitter just now, this ability to switch on to other platforms and use them is something that is obviously useful to people, and they don't feel that sort of lock-in. And then of course it gives you an idea to a wider network, and then it means that you don't have this problem with control of pricing and service quality. If there's no competition, then the prices go higher and the quality goes lower. And again, you can kind of see this playing out in things like Reddit and Twitter again, obviously today. So obviously from a platform perspective, it causes problems because you have a reduction of loyalty, you have fragmentation of user base, and then there's basically, then you have to pay a lot of costs, etc., to, have your service being better and better, and then to pay advertising, etc. So there's a whole competition part around that. And you see this with things like Facebook, etc., where they're always trying to get their MAUI numbers up, monthly active users. That's, and whenever those goes down, then, it affects their underlying stock price. So this is kind of two-sided marketplaces and multi-homing. And again, multi-homing as a concept is really important, and it's going to be important for us in this world of an AI agent platform, because guess what? There will be multi-competing platforms. You're probably thinking to yourself, well, actually, a two-sided marketplace probably sounds ideal for AI agents, and to some extent it is. And I would probably imagine that people will set up two-sided marketplaces for AI agents, because there is going to be work that needs to be done. So let's say there's going to be a set of people who want to do things like sell translation capabilities, and therefore there will be a marketplace of translators and people who want to sell translation work, and then there's going to be AI agents that are registered, that are prepared to do that translation work, and therefore the buy and sell mechanism and the transact capability will be there. And of course, there will be multi-services, there'll be multiple platforms doing that. So that's the multi-homing side of things. So therefore that will exist, so something like a kind of Fiverr for, AI agent platforms. And I would probably argue that is going to be one of the first types of platforms that will come out there, this AI agent Fiverr type platform. And I think that's probably going to be okay, but I don't think it's restricted to just buyer, sellers, and membership platforms like a Fiverr would be. But of course, I do see that coming for AI agents, because that type of work and that type of problem is going to become necessary. So what is the difference, therefore, between a two-sided marketplace and a multi-sided platform? So if I describe what a multi-sided platform is, it is a much broader concept. So rather than focusing on two user groups or sides, it's really multifaceted. There's going to be a much larger amount of user segments. Yeah, and they are less focused on the transaction capabilities, and they're more focused on enabling direct interactions between parties. And I think that is the key difference, right? So think of two-sided marketplaces as buyer-seller platforms, which is more like sort of eBay type thing, whereas if we look at multi-sided platforms, it's less focused on transactions, and it's less on buyer-sellers, and it's more on multiple user segments, and it's focused on direct facilitation of direct interactions between different parties. So the good examples of what multi-sided platforms could be would be things like Facebook and LinkedIn. And the reason that they are multi-sided platform is you've got whole different segments that are coming together for different reasons. And it's not really about transacting. If you're on a social platform and you're sharing what you're up to at that point in time, or you're sharing your photographs, you're not really focused as a primary interaction on buy or sell. You're focusing on direct interactions between multiple parties and segments. However, commerce obviously forms a part of that, because there's things like advertising, etc. And of course, there's marketplaces, etc. within that. So within that model, there is certainly the ability to make money there. So multi-sided platforms, much broader, And whereas two-sided marketplaces are a little bit more focused and more focused on the transact capability. And again, if you want to read the paper comes from 2011. It's available on Harvard Business Review website. I will put the link to this in the description again, and then you can read the paper for yourself. And that paper was by a guy called Andre Haju. I'm probably messing up his name, so I do apologize, and Julian Wright. And again, it really discusses the concepts that we talked about there. And if we actually look within that paper, within figure 1 of the diagram, there's a great diagram that shows how MSPs work there, which is, if we look here, we've got side A of the transaction and side B. Again, notice that they're using side A and side B in that sense. And in this case, it's just two sides, but of course there can be multi-sides there. And then you see the MSP sits in the middle there. And it's interacting between side A and side B, but what it's doing is facilitating this direct interaction between side A and B. Whereas if you look at something like a more kind of traditional model, the reseller sort of sits in the middle. So side A talks to the reseller, sells the goods or whatever, and then it passes on to side B. So it's acting as a sort of person in the middle, whereas the MSP sort of makes the connection, so it's more of a kind of matchmaker, and then it gets out of the way to allow you to have those direct interactions. So again, in that paper, it makes some really good examples of what an MSP is and what it's not. So something like let's take something like the stock photo company Getty, that's one of the examples. That is not an MSP, because although there is people who are selling their stock photographs and there are people who are buying the stock photographs, there's no direct interaction. There's no exchange between the parties, because essentially, the Getty is sitting in the middle between the two of them. Whereas in an MSP world, you would just broker the connection and then allow them to directly interact. Okay, so now that we understand what a two-sided marketplace is and we understand what a multi-sided platform is, then I'm hoping that it starts to become obvious why this is going to be super relevant in an AI agent world, which is people are going to develop their own AI agents that are going to perform specific tasks. It could be something like language translation. It could be the ability to, provide insurance quotes or whatever. But they need to come together on a platform, right? So unlike today, where you have the big ChatGPT mainframe in the sky, you're going to have hundreds, thousands, potentially millions of these AI agents that are going to be kicking around the planet, or that are able to do specific things. And people are going to want to make money from them, and people are going to want them to do different things. So therefore, we need a way of connecting these together. And therefore, it is in the same way that Facebook connects together the planet on people on social connections, you're gonna need something similar for AI agents. And again, Twitter's got the same thing for messaging, Instagram's got the same thing for sharing photographs. They are all MSPs on this social connection platform, and therefore we are gonna see something similar needing to occur in the space of AI agents. So what are the key components of what this MSP is going to look like? Well, actually, AI agents are going to have to be able to autonomously, and again, I do another video on this point on autonomous AI agents in the future of programming. Check that out when that appears. And AI agents are going to need to be able to connect to some sort of registry service. So there needs to be an agent registry somewhere where an AI agent can turn up and register itself on that registry and say, hey, I can do language translations, I can do Q&A, I can tell jokes, whatever the thing that AI agent is able to do, then it needs the ability to register itself as a bot and then register what its capabilities and the things that are interested in. In the same way, if you were on something like Fiverr, you would go in and register and say, I'm able to do copywriting, or I'm able to do translation, then an AI agent would need to do the same thing. So this agent registry is going to be really important. And of course, that registry needs to be browsable as well. So in the same way in something like Fiverr, I can go and search and see who is offering what services and what capabilities. Then you need some sort of search service to do the same, to go look up who is providing language translation services, browse them, filter on different things. Maybe I want to filter on AI agents that can translate into Spanish or translate into Japanese, or maybe I'm going to wanting copywriting for a certain market segment. And again, there could be whole variations within those segments. So the ability to search that directory and see who's able to do that. Now, once that's established, then if I was in something like a two-sided marketplace, or if I was being transactional in that sense, then I maybe want to be able to rate and review, for example. So, maybe I've done a piece of work, they've done some language translation for me, then I maybe want to be able to put a rating, give it 5 stars or 3 stars, or say what went well and what didn't go well. Again, similar to what you see in things like Amazon today or eBay. You have a seller rating, you have a buyer rating, you have the same thing in Uber. You have your rider rating, you have your driver rating, and then a review of how that ride went. And again, that sort of capability is going to be needed as these parties get connected together. Again, you're going to need things like authentication, the ability to log in, to log out. You're going to need, moderation, etc. That's going to be key, to block users, register complaints. So all of the things that you see, even both in two-sided marketplaces and MSPs today, are going to be key capabilities that you're going to need in this AI agent version as well. So we've got registry, we've got authentication, we've got search, we've got ratings and review. The next thing that I think is going to be really important there is this idea of messaging. So you need a way of connecting these parties together. So I'm potentially going to have multiple AI agents coming in. I'm going to want them to perform a task. I'm going to want to be able to ask who can perform a task, right? And that could be from direct communication, so direct messaging. So maybe I just want to connect, and there will be different policies on who can directly connect, right? So if in something like a LinkedIn today, I can directly connect to people who follow me or who are marked as a connection. Whereas I can't direct message somebody who is, not connected to me in any way, shape, or form. And then again, that's similar in things like Twitter. People you follow, you can direct message. If you don't follow them, then you can't direct message. And therefore, that sort of communication mechanism of who can directly message and who can collaborate becomes important. But then there's going to be this idea of channels, right? And this idea of messaging. And again, I talk about messaging in my other video, but this idea of messaging. So, as we are trying to connect these parties together, people are going to, maybe in a like two-sided marketplace, they're going to offer up an auction type thing, like in an eBay, where they will be able to say something like, I'm looking for somebody who is able to translate a 1,000-page document from English to Spanish. Here's a sample of what an excerpt of that job could look like. And therefore, people could end up responding back, and saying, hey, I'm interested in this. Or, agents would be looking at it and going, I'm interested in this. I've got this capability. And then you would have this whole ability to contract between the two, the work, and accept the bids, etc. But it doesn't need to be about buying and selling. It could just be about communication and collaboration, right? We could have agents on the platform that are really just connecting together, saying, I'm a joke agent. If you want to ask me a joke, go do that. And then you can go and look up the directory and see which agents tell jokes or which ones do calculations, and there may be no monetary aspects of it. So this is a kind of collaboration platform in that sense. But at the heart of this is messaging, because you need to be able to have different channels where the agents can subscribe, receive messages, send messages, and then directly collaborate as well. And then, of course, if we're back in the two-sided marketplace side of things, then you're going to want to be able to contract and have payment. So, and again, payments could be traditional, fiat type currencies, payment providers, etc., or it could be Web3 type stuff such as cryptocurrency. And again, same with messaging, right? And contracting, it could be in some private platforms. It could be a private messaging platform. It could be something like Kafka, etc., be able to do the streaming. But actually, if we look at something like in a distributed world, then it could be something like Push on Web3. So I think this AI agent platform is coming. There's probably more technical versions than non-technical versions that will happen. I can guarantee you that folks like Meta will be working on this today. I can guarantee that probably 100%, right? So in the same way as you have things like Facebook Marketplace, I would imagine that they're going to set up similar things where you can have your own large language models for your small business. You can have that for yourself that can give answers, that can post photographs or post messages or do scheduling. I think that whole thing is going to explode. So in some regards, I think the first AI MSP is probably going to be your existing Web 2.0 platforms. But I think and I hope that this is going to be a wider concept, and therefore these platforms will establish kind of across the world anyway. With that in mind, I think we've covered here why MSPs and two-sided marketplaces are important. It's going to be the foundation of these AI agents going forward. I do see a world where the Web 2.0 platforms will transform into AI-powered MSPs and two-sided marketplaces. But I also see the establishment of new marketplaces and decentralized marketplaces, decentralized MSPs, which are completely new to support this AI agent world. And again, I think how corporations work, which is less in the Web3 world, then these marketplaces will establish themselves both inside and outside of the companies. So this AI agent-based MSP, I think, is the future of how AI agents are going to collaborate. And I think whichever companies get in there first is probably going to be massively successful. So that is my kind of big prediction of what's coming forward. In a future video, I will probably start breaking down some of these concepts and how we can start building some of these things, agent registries, and how we can use things like web GPUs and web LLMs to then be able to unleash the entire kind of distributed computing network into one of these sort of AI-powered agent MSPs going forward. Anyway, I hope this video was useful, and I will catch you on the next one.